it's time now to peel back the onion a little bit and get a little bit more understanding as we go in depth. And what we wanted to do was start with just a discussion of some farm stops and have kind of a little synopsis from three of us. And maybe next slide there. Oh, do I do it? Oh, yeah. Thank you. So I'll take you through a little bit about Argus Farm Stop and a little definitional work about the problem that all three of us have been working on solving with our respective stores. Adam Schwieterman's going to then talk about local roots, which is really the innovator of this model, about what's been happening in Wooster and where they stand now. And then Bobbi in Bloomington was part of a group that came up to learn about the Farm Stop model and turned around and opened one in their community. And so they're now in the third year. So I think you'll get a perspective of some of the ones that have been around for a bit, but also want to share like how it's going if you start one now. What does the environment look like? So this is the slide I think that was kind of the statistics were referenced in some of the previous discussions that just show the disappearance of farms that we were so worried about. This is ag census data from 1950 in our county when local food was more prevalent to 2012, the year before we went down and saw the operation in Wooster. And what we saw was 60% of our farms had disappeared in our county, but importantly, over 90% of those that were producing food. So all the food producing farms were just really disappearing. And this was in spite of a town that cares about food, multiple farmers markets, CSAs, we have all kinds of things. And so we felt like if we couldn't really address this, how can other cities do it? The sense of urgency as well was that the average age of a farmer is 58 in our state and across the country. And what it means is that half the farmers are over 58, and they're probably looking for what's the next thing for my farm. They're thinking about succession, and they're, who's going to take the next generation onto the farm. And there wasn't really a long line of people looking to get into farming. And so, they estimate 40% of ag land in the country is going to change hands as these farmers retire in the next 20 years. And so this is a problem that needs to be solved in the near term, or these farms are going to be lost. And once they're lost, they're quite difficult to recover. That the infrastructure and the expertise for producing food takes time to develop, and we have a great appreciation for it. So it's a problem that we had a time sensitivity to work on. And it wasn't just Washtenaw County. As we dug into the latest, the ag census for Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, our states, as well as the country, we see very similar trends. The reason is not a surprise. It's farmers make very little money, whether it's 14 or 15 cents of the retail dollar is going to the farmer who planted that food, who raised the food, who cultivated, harvested, brought it to market. And the intermediaries that are taking that food from the farm to the customer are taking 85 cents. And it's not that the people taking the 85 cents are doing anything wrong. It's the food travels on average 1,500 miles from farm to table. If you go to the local grocery store down the street, you'll see and pick up lettuce. It's going to be from Yuma, Arizona. It's going to be from somewhere far away. And it's just the way our food system works. And all of the people that touch, aggregate, transport, and market that food are all taking a cut. And so really the question for farm stops is, like, what if you didn't have that distribution piece? If you have a distribution-free store where the farms are just bringing their goods in the same way they do to a farmer's market, how much of that 85 cents could we put back in the hands of farms? And could we actually restore viable farm incomes for these small to medium farms by just readjusting the share of the retail dollar? And so that's been our mission. And the answer, has been to really appreciate what farmers markets do, which are amazing. They give great funds back to the farmer. It's high margin. It's just not enough to sustain the farm. And it's also ends up with the farmer then doing multiple farmers markets, and then you're not really farming. So the burden on farms to really market their goods has been tremendous, but what they bring to the community is what we want to preserve. So the idea of a farm stop was to make sure we're maintaining the economics to the farm and the authenticity, the freshness, the in-season parts that we love about farmers markets. And at the same time, okay, what do we love about grocery stores? Well, there's two things that are really relevant here. One is high quality refrigeration. why can't, that produce deck in a big grocery store that mists every 15 minutes and makes everything look beautiful? Like, why is that reserved for food from far away? Like, why can't you have all the local farms have their produce be perfectly treated in a misted produce deck? The same with meat. Selling meat in a farmer's market is tough. It's frozen, frosty bricks, and it's just for the group that we say we care so much about, local farms. I felt like we were relegating them to some very challenging commercial pathways that were just not the way people buy food. The other part of grocery stores where people shop, so over 99% of the food is sold now through the industrial market and through grocery stores, is that one big reason is they're open every day, all year, and they have a single point of sale checkout. So if you're in a hurry, you can do all your shopping and be done with one checkout. And so what we wanted to do with the farm stops were incorporate, for sure, good refrigeration and convenience that's every day. And so it's not rocket science, but these two things coming together have really changed the way that local food can be sold. So this is a picture of Argus Farm Stop, the store where we had the reception and the tour last night. And you can see it's a beautiful thing, a store exclusively supplied with local farms. The produce deck on the left is kind of barely visible, but it is misting every 15 minutes, all of the local produce. In Michigan, there's wonderful greens that are grown in hoop houses and season extension. There is a single checkout line. And I'll mention in red the consignment model is a component of a lot of these farm stops. And this really is a kind of a legacy for us from Wooster. They're a producer-owned cooperative. Their farms own their goods and set the prices. And we said we should do the same thing. And it was not to shift risk. When farmers hear, it's consignment, it normally means, well, we're trying to make them responsible in case it doesn't sell. We do it for different reasons. We do it to break the traditional paradigm where you pay the farmer as little as possible and then you charge as much as you can to the customer. Like we wanted nothing to do with that paradigm. We wanted the math to be above the register that said, whatever you buy here, the farms are getting 70%. And it has directly connected now consumers and the farms that are producing their food in a way that's more direct. The model requires mutual trust and it builds community. Instead of having one truck come in, we have 100 farms coming in and carrying their goods in every week. When farmers come in, they're like rock stars. We say, Farmer Dave Steinhauser's in the house, and he gets, free coffee. He's here in the front row. You'll hear him tomorrow with Kathy. But it's, instead of having to deliver to the back of a grocery store at a certain hour and not being able to go into the store and work with your goods or meet your customers, it's very interactive in a farm stop environment. And I think I covered why consignment. It's also, when Kathy goes into a grocery store and she sees local, in a big grocery store, I kind of cringe because I know she's going to go find the produce manager and demand to know what is local today that I can buy in this store. And it's not normally a great outcome for that produce manager. So we do think this consignment model is definitely more work, and it's not a purist approach. Like, even we have a mixture. Like, we had wholesale through Cherry Capital. When our local farms stock out of everything, we used to just have empty shelf, no more garlic or no more product. And now we found, there's a role for a mixture. So we say consignment is possible, as local as possible. For sure, what we have in common is a mission to grow the local food system as why we're here. It's our reason for being here and the reason for our staff. But these models, I call them ultra local, and they're not really subject to local washing. Like, no big chain of grocery stores would want to deal with 100 deliveries and pickup trucks and the attendant communication that you have to be an expert on, and the logistics and the payouts. But I think the three of us, like that part of it. It is such a community. And I think this is about my last slide, but so this is from MSU recently, showing in Michigan, like when you can expect to see fresh produce coming to the market, and that's the green bars. And these are normally the months of the year when farmers markets thrive. So this part has been relatively healthy, but what do farms do in Michigan? For sure, January through May, most farmers markets are closed, and farms can still produce. So with the yellow and the purple bars, it is the method of producing season extension, like under hoop houses, and there's ways to grow amazing spinach in Michigan. It's sweeter in the winter. It produces natural sugar. There's also storage techniques to store your apples, store your carrots, store, potatoes, others, and sell them throughout the year. But there hasn't been a place for those small farmers to sell these goods. So like a common question is, well, what do you guys do in the winter with this farm stop concept? And our answer is it is abundant. The people who want to support the farms have a place to shop. And 36% of Argus produce sales for the year happen January through May. So it's a very economically contributing component to have a brick and mortar everyday store through the winter. It's been a successful model. We're formed as an L3C, a mission-directed LLC, but you can see there's models as nonprofits, there's models as cooperatives owned by producers and owned by customers. So the farm stop concept can work under a variety of formation approaches. But the main thing is really the mission part has to come first and come through cleanly. For sure, for our customers to understand it, for our staff to understand it, and the farmers to trust why we're here. The impact, I think we're all right. The impact has been, we started with 40 producers. We have over 200 today. Most farmers continue to sell at the farmer's market. They love it. They probably pick one, maybe two, and then they just bring in a lot more produce, and they stock us up before the market, and they stock us up after the market, especially if there was a rainy day. They go back empty, which is ideal. Everything harvested is for their customers. And in sales, the impact has been big with our top 80 plus farms averaging over 50,000 in sales through Argus, which is, these are meaningful financials that we think are at the level now where you can actually make a viable living as a farmer because you have this extra assistance to sell your products. You don't have to take the second job off the farm maybe, or maybe you can get health care. Like the farmers we're working with are not looking for, ultimate wealth, but they're looking to get up to a level that's sustainable. And so I think these models can help. And the statistic that we pulled is the number of farms that are producing produce, vegetables. For us, this is a surrogate of like farmers market style farms. And so we saw over the last 5 years, 59 new farms in our county starting to sell produce. And so this is a huge uptake. It puts us number one in the state. And it is an offset. There's also what's happening with all of the row crops in our county. I think without this, instead of having a slight increase, as the undersecretary mentioned, in our county, we would have been at a 5 to 10% reduction in farms. So the food part is offsetting this transition that's happening anyways in the row crop realm. I'd like to introduce Adam Schwieterman to continue.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I just want to ask very kindly that you all give yourself a massive round of applause for being here. I was so excited last night. I got to meet some of you, and I just wanted to share this feeling that working in Wooster, Bill kind of mentioned and gave us a little bit of a nod that there's a bit of an origin story to this model, at least here regionally, that is tied back to local roots. And that was always something I was hesitant to say because I didn't actually know it. People would be like, you guys started this, right? You guys started this. And I was like, that's a brash statement. I don't know if I'm willing to lay claim to that. Somebody's going to know and then call us out for being false. But then, and then people just keep saying it. And it's like, it's really exciting to be a part of a larger network of people. My other joke was, sometimes I feel like when we're operating in isolation at times, it feels like one of those, zombie kind of apocalypse horror stories where people are hunkered down in a bunker and then they get the Morse code signal that's like, are you out there? Are you operating? Are you okay? And I was like, Bill was like, do you want to have a conference? And I'm like, we are out here. Yes. Let's get people together. It's really great. So anyway, I just wanted to celebrate all of you guys. I think my value that I can provide to this is not to give you a bunch of rose-colored glasses about how great everything is necessarily, and just to to tack on a little bit to what the undersecretary said a little bit, I think she mentioned that this is a system that we are working in. And when I said, qualified with not just rose-colored glasses and how great everything is, my point is I'm going to show you a little bit of what is happening in Wooster, Ohio, over about 5 or 10 minutes here. And then just know that each and every individual community that's going to be operating something like this is going to need something different. It's going to require something different, has different inputs, it has different outputs. But I can tell you the Wooster story, which is kind of a fun one. Qualifying with, I wasn't here when this place was founded, so I get to tell somebody else's story, which is also great. We're part of a community, and so it's fun for me to be able to look back and wonder what was there before I got there. The organization founded, if you don't know Wooster, Wayne County, Ohio, just south of Cleveland, north of Columbus, rural agricultural landscape, kind of rolling hills, small farms. And at the time we had this is a common story I've heard with some of the 7-day-a-week markets, is that whole, we had an outdoor farmers market. It was formed in the early 90s. People were like, this is amazing. It's so nice to have local food. It grows 7 days a week. We're only selling it 1 day a week for 2 or 3 hours. And what if I work on Saturdays, or what if it rains, or what if the produce grows ripe on Monday? Why can't we just move this indoors? I always tell people, not a necessarily original idea to have a 7-day-a-week market, but for our area, and it sounds like in other places too, to bring a lot of local foods in to a building and say hey, we're exclusively going to focus on small and local food systems through this retail outlet was quite innovative. And the story that I want to tell is,
Can't hear.
Talk closer to it.
I can talk louder. Closer, thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me in the back?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Cool. So a grassroots community-based startup. There were people in our area that were looking at that farmer's market and saying why can't we do this? They formed a steering committee. This is public, interest, grassroots. 13 people ended up getting together. They started having discussions at the library. One of those kinds of stories. They ended up holding a public interest meeting. Over 150 people showed up. They decided at the time they wanted to form as a cooperative, meaning it wasn't about one individual. It was going to be community owned. They started selling shares of the cooperative. It's $50 if you want to buy a share. That goes to a household. We now have 3,000 families in our 27,000 person town that have signed up and given us $50. So it's a pretty massive amount of community support for the thing. And it really just goes back, I think, at the very root of it, the original concept was what Bill was talking about, is creating and fostering that relationship of getting to know your farmer. He mentioned coming into Local Roots and seeing the chicken farmer come in and bring in eggs and having chicks in the truck. To me, that's every day. And I think I lose the forest through the trees sometimes about how special that is until I go to another place, a little bit like Kathy, maybe shopping, at the big box store, and just being where's the local food, And so we've done a pretty good job, I think, at fostering something that works for us. These are some of the pictures of the founding organizational efforts. I mean, it was volunteers, zero pay, zero debt. They didn't start with any debt, and they didn't start with any investment. So that was a sweat equity, farmers going in there, building countertops and shelving units, painting the walls, bringing in jackhammers, because maybe you guys know something I don't. I'll be very interested to hear you guys all talk later, but at least in our world, there's not a whole lot of money in local food system. And if you want to do this, it really has to be a passion project, at least for us to get started. That's how we came into it, was we have no idea how to do this. We want to do it. There's no money in it. We're going to do it anyway. And you can see people, I don't think OSHA was there for this, but, lifting our first hand-built sign up and mounting it against the wall. It started with card tables and linen cloths and farmers actually standing behind it. The cooperative formed this kind of, transactional entity that was really not there to do anything other than just facilitate the sale of these foods. The next iteration of growth for the organization, and when I said every community has something different that they need, I know that Bill and Bobbi kind of has gone down this path. A lot of people have interest in commercial kitchens for the production of value-added foods. That was something that was a key component of the original vision of Local Roots that I would encourage everybody. You have to be kind of crazy to want to get into it, but I think you probably are all a little bit crazy anyway, which is what makes it work. So we got a grant from the USDA. Thank you very much, USDA people. Back in 2012, another one in 2013 that helped build the infrastructure for 2 commercial kitchens. So one we use for ready-to-eat food consumption. You can get lunch, takeout foods, and takeout coolers. And another one is a Department of Agriculture inspected space where you can put a label on a product, ship it, and sell it. Some of the products that come out of there are just, it has turned a little bit more into a small business incubation center. You know, we don't tell people you have to use only local food if you're going to produce here. We have a bagel producer that sells at the local farmers markets, and we look at that like that's good for our economy. But none of the ingredients come from a local source. Other ones, you know, and this is up to the individual entrepreneur, do focus a little bit more on the local food component. We have a hot sauce producer, for example, that works directly with a farmer, plants organic seeds, harvests those, packages and freezes them, and then turns them into delicious hot sauces. Last year, I think we had 24 kitchen renters. Some of those are peak season produce people that'll come in and be like, hey, I have way too many blueberries at the end of the blueberry season. Can I vacuum seal and pack them down and freeze them and sell them? Others run full service catering companies. We have food trucks that operate out of that. And then all of that works in coordination with the market, which is a really nice, I'm going to show you a little graph later of what we're working on. But as soon as you have the market and then you have the commercial kitchen, now all of a sudden you have an outlet where there's a high barrier to entry for commercial kitchens. If people want to be able to put the infrastructure investment into a space like that, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ours is shared use, so come in, use it for $10 an hour, $15 an hour, really low barrier to entry. And then if you're approved as a producer, you have a guaranteed outlet in our market. So not only do you have the space to make the product, but you have a space to sell it as well, and it becomes a little bit of a small business launching pad. Just our story over time, you can kind of see these are in hundreds of thousands of dollars of sales, or millions, I guess, is on my vertical axis there. Organization founded in 2010 and has grown to the point where we're just under $2 million in sales. And yeah, right? Yep. And what I would say is we plateaued at that point. Like we have a 9,000 square foot facility. We're trying to buy a new one. If you want to talk to me about buying and renovating buildings and trying to fund it in the local food economy, you know, bring a beer, I guess I would say. I'm going to need one. It's a challenge, what we're going through right now, but we believe that if we can get into a larger facility, that, you know, those numbers can double in the plan that we're putting together, and keeping that local food economy kind of at the heart of it. And I'll just give you a little bit more insight on the net. You know, we did $1.86 million in sales last year. Our net operating profit was $20,000. We're in a triple net lease. You know, if you're a building owner, you know if an HVAC system goes out, like that's your year or 2 years. So running a very narrow margin, but to Bill's point, intentionally. Like it is not our point to try to generate income. We don't want to make money necessarily. We want to provide a system that works for the producers that sell there. Last year we had 300 producers, small, independent, mom and pop, very few employees, if any. You know, some of the most common employees we'll see around is a producer brings their kid home from college because they want to be able to, you know, help out on the weekend type of situation. These are co-op members. Again, lots of different you know, versions of how to sell these local food systems. We organized as a cooperative where both producers and consumers can be members. You have to be a member to sell there, to be a producer. You don't have to be a member to shop there. And that's grown kind of steadily over time, just showing community interest. The next phase, if you're interested in kind of what we're working on next, is a little bit of a small business incubation focus. So taking that kind of flywheel scenario that we're propping up where we have the local food market and then you add the commercial kitchen into it. Our next wave of interest is more in the nonprofit realm. So we partnered with a sistering organization that we're going to start co-programming with through the market and the commercial kitchen that just offers small business incubation support services to small value-added food producers, farmers, et cetera. And the idea being there, and I think I'm preaching to the choir, but everybody, has seen this, I'm sure. Farmers might be, and they're a great example, because I know that they're not great graphic designers usually. Farmers might be great at growing produce, but they might not be great at graphic design, making a label, running a website, applying for grants, for example. So we aim to kind of fill that gap a little bit. And I'm going to hand it over to Bobbi.
Okay.
Bring that mic down.
Oh yeah, I'm not very tall. Okay. Yeah, it is really awesome to be here today, and I have already learned so much stuff. So I know we're kind of behind time. That's good. I speak fast when I'm nervous in front of this many people. So we'll be good to go. Let me make sure I can work this machine. Does it go? It goes. Okay, so yes, I grew up in Michigan. I live in Indiana now. After today, I might want to move back, but we'll find out. So we started our farm stop. We were, why? We had lots of markets. We had a really good local food community, direct sales. We had even some restaurants. But our farms, they're still struggling, right? You could see our farmers markets were packed. Farmers didn't have a voice in any of these local outlets, and they weren't accessible to all of our community members either. So, in about 2019, the farmers started to organize. Right? What solutions can we come up with? Right? And then, as Bill mentioned, we came up to the Argus course. I think there were like 16 of us. There were quite a few of us up here. And in 2020, we organized as an agricultural co-op. Right? We wanted the farmer voice in our whatever we were doing. And we started raising funds. We were really fortunate that we got a lot of grant funds from our city. That doesn't happen very often, to invest in local food infrastructure like that. So we were able to get a lot of grants. We got one loan from CoBank, which is also a great place to support co-ops, and some farmer equity. So in 2021, we were able to open a farm stop with 29 farm owners. And there you go, some initial pictures. So this is our super team, I call them. We have a board. And when I say volunteer, I don't mean they just come to meetings. They volunteer. They volunteer all the time. They volunteer when I call them and I'm stuck on something on a dime. It's amazing. We also have a couple paid part-time management. That includes me. And we have a really slim staff to be open 7 days a week. But together we do it because everybody is really excited and passionate about this. Our vendors, you could see all of our vendors. Yep, they get to set their prices. They get to decide what and how much to deliver. We really have our farm vendors. They own the co-op. They do pay equity dues every year. We offer sponsorships because we don't ever want that to be prohibitive. And firms receive 70% of the sales. Our artisan vendors include food and craft artisans that are local producers but not growing their own, and they get 65% of all their sales. So it's really awesome. So here are just a few pictures to show you about our store, our cafe, and our shared use kitchen. And down there on the end, you see Aaron. Aaron and I had a big woohoo moment because our cooler that's got 3 curtains, we got to reopen the 3rd curtain. We were getting slimmer and slimmer in the winter, and yesterday, we opened that 3rd door back up, full of food. All right. We really do focus on our farms, right? I think you'll hear this a lot, but we want them to have freedom that allows them to stay on the farm, that allows them to maximize their income and have a voice and work together more. Maybe I have to aim at this thing. We also, like I said, with consumer accessibility, we found a spot where we can be open every day in a neighborhood, a bus stop, a parking lot. Like, we're so lucky to have that space. Not to mention, we have a magic anonymous donor that allows us to double our food stamp dollars. So every food stamp recipient gets 50% off all eligible items. So this has been really great for our accessibility. And I think as our farmers can feel good about charging what they need to charge to make a living on their own farms. We work on fostering community between the producers and the customers. And of course, we want to reach new people that didn't have access to local food before. Oh, I'm sorry about that. So, just a few numbers so you can see. So like Bill said, we are starting year 3 right now. So we have full year numbers on 22 and 23. So you can see the store sales grew, farm sales grew a little bit more, 22%. I'd really like to highlight 86% growth in dairy. We all know dairy requires a lot of infrastructure. So this is huge. We have a whole brand new dairy in our county. And then as consignment works, what we paid to our farmers is exactly the same percentage as what they sold. So they are always getting 70% of those farm sales. We all have the challenges. Our farm stopped being new. We still have cash flow difficulties. We're not quite breaking even. I think we might make it this year. I'm sure we'll make it by next year. We just might make it this year. And so I still am a little questioning, how are we going to make it so we can grow when we get outside the size of our building? How do we expand? How do we do these things? But we're going to break even, I think, this year. Thanks. It's really exciting, but it's a little tricky that our customer growth is faster than our farm production. So, keeping the food on the shelf all the time. Bill mentioned the option for wholesale. We have a little bit of that, but we don't even have local distributors for wholesale that are at that scale. But hopefully, this will grow on both fronts. And we certainly we want to build our farmers, but we don't want to flood our easy-to-grow crops. We need to be able to grow this in a very, broad and diversified manner. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, farming or herding farmers, it's like herding cats, and they all have their own personalities, and they all have their own skill sets, and they have their own production standards, and we have to work with all this and put it together as, one unified front for our customers. But the one thing our farmers all do have is they believe in this. So we figure out how to make it work. And we've noticed a lack of technology. We do really appreciate Retail Edge, you'll hear from. But there's the little databases and the way to keep track of things. We're very fortunate to have a board member to help with these. But this has been real tricky to how do we minimize our time in the office to maximize our time out there on the floor and with our farms. So what are we doing moving forward? Well, thank you all. We are applying for one of those grants through the USDA, Indiana Department of Agriculture, because while we have a small shared use kitchen, it doesn't even have a stove in it yet. So we really want to upgrade our kitchen so that we can not only allow more of our farms to do value-added production, I know there's some that want to, but also we can take some of this surplus produce, the stuff that doesn't grow when it's too much in the season, like tomatoes, and we can develop our own Farm Stop branded value-added line and aggregate some of this food for those farmers that don't want to do their own value-added. We are working with Purdue on some informatics stuff so that, focused for our farms and for the farm stop to better plan ahead and make sure we are covering all those bases when it's possible to grow them. We are just joining Indiana Grown, which is a network of local producers. Our board is, and our management, we are training. We're looking at some more DEI initiatives and leadership development. And, like all farm stops, we are always trying to find better ways to collaborate all around. So that's a little bit about our farm stop. So now you've heard a lot this morning. I bet you're all ready to take a break. So here are a few highlights. We need local food to be part of a good, sustainable local community. We need to get that pendulum to swing back toward local food. It is essential that we build up these infrastructure pieces so that small and medium-sized farms can be part of this food economy. And we certainly want it to be easier for people to shop local. We want it to level the playing field economically. And we all believe that farm stops are going to be this breakthrough economic supermodel that can help make this happen. Yay. Thank you.